Once again, I'd like to dedicate the second episode in the Opioid in Appalachia series to those who have passed away from the opioid crisis, those who are currently in active addiction, and those who are in active recovery from it. I stand with you. For those I have lost, I miss you. And for those who are still fighting, you can do this. One day, one step, one moment at a time. There is hope. There are resources. Just reach out. Welcome to Hellbilly, the darker side of Appalachia. Just a friendly reminder not to whistle, sing, or scream in the darkness because you might find yourself surrounded by skinwalkers or someone who might be there to steal your catalytic converter or some copper wire. Either way, it won't be pleasant. Tonight on Hellbilly, we are going to continue our discussion on the opioid crisis in central Appalachia. We will be covering briefly what it looked like in West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. Spoiler alert, it wasn't much different. A little bit more about fentanyl and a new synthetic opiate that has claimed a lot of lives in Knoxville and the surrounding areas, but is probably already, if we're being honest, seriously though, already in basically everywhere in central Appalachia, like Tri-Cities, Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia. Let's be honest. So, let's get to it. When I was doing my research, I started primarily with my home area, which I think is fair because that's where I'm from and because it was documented that Purdue targeted Pennington Gap. But digging deeper upon the success in Pennington Gap, they dug further and they went into the coal mines in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Of course they did. Why would they not? That's stupid. They were out to make money, and coal mines was where it was at. Logging was where it was at. Anywhere there was pain, they were like, ka-ching. The story doesn't really vary from region to region within central Appalachia. And I wanted to make sure that I clarified that. Same shit, different day. Basically, the people were working, they were getting hurt, they were being prescribed the medication the same way that Purdue was pushing the medication through Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, all of that, Pennington Gap, etc., etc. And the people suffered. A lot of that happened in retrospect because the areas are isolated. We're in the mountains. They assumed that we were behind, which at the time, given the time frame, the late 90s, mid 90s to late 90s, early 2000s, if you think about it, cell service was not really prevalent back then. Internet was just coming online. Prodigy people, can I get a holla? Holla. Thank you. AOL, what's up? What's up? But seriously, my Prodigy people, y'all know where it's at. I grew up on Prodigy. I can almost remember. And if you give me a minute, I could probably remember my first email address. I know it was ZQ something or another. And one of my best friends, Scotty Scarberry, I'm calling you out right now, probably remembers it for me because he and I became friends through Prodigy when we were teenagers. But I digress. There wasn't a lot of connectivity, so we were isolated. We were behind. I think it was a blessing and a curse that we were behind in so many ways. A blessing in that, to quote Melissa Aftermauer in one of her recent interviews with Drew Barrymore, she said that we lived in the last analog age, so we weren't bombarded with a lot of like social media that we have now. So we didn't have things coming at us left and right. We had downtime from news, from people, from things coming at us in all directions. But at the same time, we weren't able to access information like we can now that would inform us about the medication that we would be taking in. So a blessing and a curse. And one could argue that left us stuck. And maybe it did. I don't know. That's for you all to ultimately decide, I suppose. Were we stuck? Were we behind? Were we isolated? Who knows? I personally think it was a petri dish that people, looking at you, Purdue, a petri dish that they were using to kind of see what could grow. And they found out that it would grow. And it would grow in droves and it would provide a lot of money. And on the last podcast, I talked about how it would change the face of the medical community, but I didn't really go into a lot of depth. And I'd like to kind of clear up some of that to start. The happy face pain scale began, by my understanding, during this time. Pain became the quote unquote fifth vital sign. And I remember saying that doctors were prescribing this en masse lest they be sued. And it was because of stuff like this. They didn't want to be sued because information that was being put out, like the pain is the fifth vital sign and so on and so forth. And what is your pain level on this happy face scale of 1 to 10? And things have since then become really, really tight. Almost too tight, I would argue. And it's a hot take probably. But hear me out. During this time period, all of this was very loose because the doctors that were being given this information were taking it as truth because Purdue is doctoring, like we talked about, the graphs, the research, providing the FDA fake information. And just to recap, like my sound effects there, they were great. Purdue was doctoring all of this stuff, and the doctors were taking it at face value, or they knew better and they were prescribing it anyway. Now it's kind of a different story. We have entered a time period where the Sackler family has been disgraced. The FDA and the DEA have cracked down on prescribing and, I guess, monitoring pain medication to the nth degree. The question that I'm posing here for thought is, have we gone from one extreme to the other? And I think this is a really good question to consider because there are people out there who really do need this medication to function because they are in severe chronic pain because of medical diagnoses that warrant the use of said medication. But given the fact that Purdue tried to make money off of marketing this medication for things it was not to be used for, the people that need it now cannot get it. This is why we can't have nice things. So I'm just going to leave that there for a moment and let you marinate in it. Some people do need this medication to survive, but they can't have it, and this is why we can't have nice things. Not everybody who takes the medication, and I mentioned this before, becomes addicted in a way that I guess you could argue would be likened to a street addiction. I think knowing how drugs work, or chemicals work, not drugs, but chemicals work within the brain. Anything that we put into our brain gets, used to taking or gets used to being there. So yeah, anybody who takes this medication or other medications, any psych medication, any medication for a long period of time, the brain gets used to it being there. So when you take it away, there's going to be withdrawal. But there are a lot of people out there who take this medication who aren't looking for it on the street, who are taking it the way that it's supposed to be taken. But they're no longer able to access this medication because of what happened in the past. So where do we find a middle ground? It's $1 million question. Where is that middle ground? There is a difference between a physical addiction and a psychological addiction. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. You'd have to tell me. And that's something that I hope to talk about with. I have a friend of mine who will be and has graciously agreed to come on and speak with me and tell her story. I love her very much, and her opinion on the matter is amazing. She's wonderful. And I hope to get her on either the next episode or the one after. But if we're talking about a physical dependence versus a psychological dependence, where do we draw the line? And that's a good question. Is there even a line to be drawn? I worked at a MAT clinic, which, for those of you not in the know, is a medically assisted treatment facility to help individuals who are addicted to opiates come off of their drug of choice safely using Suboxone. And a doctor there, a psychiatrist with whom I worked, and I were discussing because we worked together in tandem. We saw clients together. I was the therapist, he was the psychiatrist, and it was best practice. We agreed for both of us to see each client together so that we both knew in the moment what was going on. And I still think that is best practice in that situation. And he and I were talking one day, and he was telling me that he will prescribe benzos to people who need them because some people do. Some people have been through a lot of trauma and they need that medication to help them balance out. And the same thing for opiates. But not everybody does. And it's a case by case basis. And I agree with him. I 100% agree with that viewpoint. But Purdue, in the way that they approached it, completely obliterated the ability for people to actively view that as a possibility to a point. And now it is very hard for the people who need that medication to be able to access it. So there's a lot of people out there in chronic pain from diagnoses that are extreme that really could benefit from it. So they're asked out. They're fucked off. And so I say again, this is why we can't have nice things. And I'm not blaming the addicts. I'm blaming Purdue. Let's get that straight. I am not blaming anybody who happened to become addicted to it. I'm blaming Purdue. I'm not blaming the doctors. I'm blaming Purdue because they pushed false information and created this. So let's back up for a second and talk about how all of this came together. West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia. What was the pipeline? How did it get from place to place to place to place to place? What were the main players in this? And it goes a little something, something like this. It happened across the corridor. Pike County in Kentucky, Mingo County, West Virginia, Wise County, Virginia, and Sullivan County, Tennessee. Same mountains, different state lines, but you can cross at least 3 of them in the same afternoon. Everybody knows someone, and I promise you, I swear to God to you, everybody knows somebody somewhere. We do. We just do. We're all connected. We're all so close. And if the need is great enough, and you're running drugs, the need is great enough, you can get back and forth as much as you need to. There are so many ways to connect it. And one of the biggest ways is Interstate 81. So back roads to 81. All roads lead back to 81. And I-81 runs a huge swath. I don't know where I think it maybe goes all the way down to Florida. I don't know. But I do know that 81 I think at least goes up to DC, but I may be wrong. But it cuts. And Kentucky and West Virginia reach 81 through Kentucky reaches 81 through Knoxville via 40 in certain aspects, through some other county or back roads. West Virginia through I think 75 and some tunnels and other back roads. Correction. Kentucky meets 81 through 75. West Virginia meets 81 through 77. I made a mistake. That's not unusual. It will happen again. I'm sorry. It's been a minute since I've driven to West Virginia, but I mean, there's a multitude of ways that you can get to 81, but 81 is the main way. It's the main interstate. And people moved the drugs up and down through that area. It didn't take much. It wasn't hard. Everybody knew somebody somewhere. Because when you think about this area, it's mountainous, it's isolated in its own right, especially back in the day, and people know people. And if you take the back roads, it's really easy to get from one place to the other and then hit Interstate 81 and you're in the Tri-Cities or Knoxville or Roanoke or Wytheville or Marion. I could go on. So anything like that spreads like wildfire. Heroin, fentanyl, so on and so forth. And it's my understanding that in 2010, the system finally decided that they were going to, sometime in 2010, or the 2010s, and they were going to tighten up on their prescriptions and monitoring pills. The chemical formulations of pills were redone, all in the name of stabilization. And I think everybody that is listening to me probably understands that this was futile. But you know what? A good pat on the back and an attaboy. And, hey, you can sleep at night, Big Pharma. Good job. Okay. But the thing about us down here is we're a hold my beer, hold my jack, hold my moonshine kind of mentality. Give us a minute, okay? We'll come up with something. They never thought that they needed to treat the fact that they had created a dependence. And I won't say inadvertently, because I think that they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. And they didn't want to funnel money into treating that dependence. I can speculate as to why, but I don't know if that's going to do anybody any good. Money, 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 money. But what are you going to do? Let's scenario, okay? Bob goes out and he's used to getting his oxy. And it's like in the early 2010s. And he can't doctor shop anymore. Heroin's a good option. So now he's homeless and shooting up heroin in a trap house using dirty water and dirty needles. HIV is increasing. Hepatitis C is increasing. Nobody's funneling money into treatment like they funneled money into creating the problem because healing the people doesn't matter as much as testing the drug on them. And that's my hard stance. They were testing the drug on them. I don't know if that's controversial or if other people believe that too, but my research has led me to believe that's what happened. They were like, oh, I see a chance to make money, make it. Let's see what happens. They fucked around and found out, tightened it up, and left people to die. And then came fentanyl. And when last we spoke, I had mentioned that people were cutting fentanyl with like I don't know, pills that were marketed as MDMA, certain and various benzos, rest in peace, Little Peep, for one, rest in peace, a lot of people that I know, mixing it and cutting into marijuana for whatever reason, I have no idea. People not knowing that the stuff that they were buying was laced with fentanyl, and so they were overdosing en masse because they couldn't do the amount that they thought that they were used to doing and dying foaming at the mouth, you're dead, no Narcan, sorry. Or you're getting a drop off taxi outside the emergency room. Hopefully, somebody will save your life. Wish you the best. The problem with fentanyl is not that it's just stronger, it's unpredictable, it's cheap. It doesn't require the same things as heroin, which comes from poppy fields, like weather, time, growth. I wouldn't even argue that it requires somebody who knows what they're doing. It just requires people bringing it in and stamping pills and mixing it with stuff and selling it. It's a mess. But if I reverse backward to what I had just said a minute ago about how Purdue funneled all of this money into creating the problem and no money into fixing it, this is where we end up. We end up with heroin that leads to fentanyl and mass overdoses. But we also have a problem with people who think that addiction is a moral failing, and that if people could just stop using, this wouldn't be an issue at all. But it doesn't work like that, y'all. It's a brain disease, and it's a disease of choice via the brain. Your brain chemistry is altered, and you have to choose every single day to fight against brain chemistry. That is not easy. That is the same kind of issue as choosing every day to fight against depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD, bipolar, mania. I could go on and on and on. But in this area, in Central Appalachia, a lot of people view addiction as a moral failing, which is really confusing to me because a lot of people in this area who view addiction as a moral failing do not view adultery as a moral failing. You can't see my face, but I'm side-eyeing the microphone like it's somebody. I don't know why, but I'm like, looking at you. You know who you are. There's not really anybody I'm meaning that toward, but if the shoe fits, then you know who you are. I will say it again. Nobody fucking wakes up and says, golly gee, Beef, I want to be an addict when I grow up. That sounds fantastic. I'm going to digress here for a moment and tell you all a personal story. My dad was an addict and an alcoholic, and I knew a lot about it growing up. And I don't remember what age I was, but I remember having to throw together a Halloween costume really quickly. And I went as someone who had overdosed on heroin. And I remember the looks that people gave me when they asked me what I was, because I even painted my arm to resemble track marks. I was a kid and I knew what that was. To say that it probably humbled the people that handed me candy is an understatement. And I hope that they were humbled, to be fair. I never forgot that. I don't remember why I chose that, but that was the first thing that came to mind, and it just is what it is. But that's what I went as one year. And I'm not picking on my dad by any stretch. He's doing well, and I love him to pieces. But he had his time. He had his moment with it. But he was also a veteran. So when some people say this is what happens when people make bad choices, like I said again, choices exist, but it's not exactly making bad fucking choices. I don't believe in good or bad choices. I believe only in choices. Choices exist. And we make choices based on what is going on for us in the moment. And most of the time, we are making choices that we feel are going to alleviate the pain that we feel in the moment. And when it comes to addiction and relearning how to make choices in recovery, we have to build up distress tolerance. And it takes years sometimes to do that. And that doesn't make people bad. That doesn't mean their character is flawed. So take your judgment and shove it up your ass. Thank you. This has been a TED Talk. So I'd like to remind you that the people that you judge could be, I don't know, a dude in his 30s that you go to church with every Sunday. He goes to work every day at Eastman, a construction worker. And one day he falls off a scaffolding and hurts his back. And he gets a prescription because there's a fracture in his spine. Not enough to paralyze him, but enough to do some pain damage. And that prescription invades his brain, but he doesn't get, the euphoria from it. But ultimately, he feels normal. His brain quiets down. He feels relief. And the next thing you know, he's hooked. Or a teacher, early 40s. She got a family. She's functional. She moves a desk the wrong way, trying to get her classroom situated for the new semester, new year of school, and hurts her neck. Finds out she has degenerative disc disease after a time, has multiple neck surgeries, and ends up with a cage in her neck, ends up having to go on disability. Workman's comp starts cracking down because they don't want to pay. She starts having to stretch out the prescriptions, become harder and harder to refill, and she doesn't know what to do. So she cries every night from the pain because she's trying to manage it as best she can. And then maybe, just maybe, you have an 18-year-old who's playing football and he takes a hard hit and he's got a bright future ahead of him, scholarship ready, golden, and he gets injured really badly, and so a doctor prescribes him an opiate, and his home life isn't that great, and the opiate helps him navigate a lot of that, but the doctor decides that he wants to take him off of it after the injury is healed, but instead of going to therapy because his family doesn't believe in therapy, he starts finding an alternative on the street, and then he realizes that he's lost his scholarship and decides one day that he's going to take a hot shot and not wake up. A hot shot of heroin, maybe mixed with some gasoline or something, so he doesn't wake up. None of these people sought out that life. And these are your neighbors, your friends, your loved ones, and they deserve your compassion, your mercy, and your love and support, rather than your judgment, your disdain, and your feigned ignorance. Love them. Don't enable, but love them. And I will do an episode on what enabling looks like versus what it doesn't. But let's get one thing clear as we move forward. We are all of us, one trauma away from an addiction. None of us are safe because all of us are human. So as we move into the last segment of tonight's session, one thing that I would like to discuss is something that was brought to my attention recently by my producer. The newest drug in Tennessee, the newest opioid. I may end up doing an episode on this by itself, but I would like to give some information about it while we're talking about this tonight, just as a precursor. My producer, like I mentioned, brought this to my attention, and I'd like to put it out there just on the nature that it is inherently very dangerous. It's a synthetic opiate called cyclophorine, and by my understanding, it is right now primarily in East Tennessee. So for all of my East Tennessee folks in Knox, Roane, McMinn, severe counties. But again, I'm being honest, and I think all of my people where I'm from, try Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia, all of you all know it's probably there too. Asheville, you probably have it as well. Keep an eye out because it's apparently a fucking doozy. They say it's 10 times more potent than fentanyl, and as of this month, over 40 overdose deaths in Tennessee alone, East Tennessee, have been linked to it, though the most cases have been concentrated in and around Knoxville. It's not detected yet by standard toxicology screens, so it's difficult for people to know if it's present in their supply. So I'm really putting this out there. Reach out. Have Narcan on your person. I don't care if you don't use. I don't care if, and I can't stress this enough, if you don't use, I don't care. It's not hard. At least I don't think it's hard. And I'm gonna find out. But carrying Narcan on you might not be a bad idea because Narcan can save a life. It can help somebody stay alive until EMT can get there because Narcan reverses the effects of the opiate in the brain. TDH, Tennessee Department of Health, confirms that it is effective against cyclophorine or forine, however you want to pronounce it, but it does require multiple doses of it. Keep that in mind. So it's going to take multiple hits of Narcan. Also, to be safe, Tennessee has seen a rise in nitazines, which is another class of synthetic opioids that can be more powerful than fentanyl. And these are also being mixed into illicit street drugs. So if you are using, please, please, please do not buy from anyone that you don't know and trust if possible. And I know it's not always possible. I understand that. But try to be safe because I am tired of losing people and every life matters. So hopefully on the next episode, we will talk with a friend of mine. The next episode or so, I should say, Polly Jessen. She will share with us her story and we will discuss a little bit more than that. Once again, I'd like to thank you for sitting with me a spell. I'm glad you're here and I hope you come back. This has been a Strummer's Mom production. Thanks, Frank.